Alright, hello everyone. We have made it through the subs, the specials, the bottom, low, mid tiers. We are on the high and top tiers, the final part of this 5-part tier list series, and we're gonna get it done today. Subscribe if you enjoy, and let's do this. Let's start A tier simple and get the chargers out of the way. I talked about these weapons a lot with Q a bit back, and pretty much everything from that talk applies. They are inconsistent, difficult, have a lot of easy ways to counter it, and currently they're just a bit unreliable in an all mode setting. That being said, what we've seen from chargers like Q is picking it for specific map modes, like barnacle zones or brine water, and they've been very valuable in those niches, with both Zekofin and E-liter working out. I believe E-liter currently sees a bit more use, but they're both definitely viable, and I think as niche picks, they're turning out to be in a pretty decent spot overall. The long rapid has been pretty interesting. I think this weapon has been shown to have way more potential than we originally thought, and we've already seen top teams try this a little bit. The whale combo with a 180p rapid is very threatening, and even line marker, for all the difficulties it has, is actually kind of okay on this weapon. It has a few combos, location tools, and it can kind of have some uses. That being said, the reason it's not much higher is I do not think it's going to benefit from the cooler meta at all. Yeah, it has jump RNG, and that will be better. This weapon struggles being ran down. Line marker is not a sub that keeps it from being ran at, it's just as unreliable to hit as the main weapon. So I think as cooler gets more popular, this thing could honestly get lower. That being said, 180p whale is pretty solid. I could definitely see it maintaining its place with good rapid players who are able to maintain their spacing. Squeezer. I was so tempted to put this weapon higher. This has always kind of been a sleeper pick because, I mean, the main weapon is just absolutely ridiculous, but I have two problems with it. One, this is a weapon that does not get a lot of specials and has a very unreliable special, and that is not a good combination. Not being able to get much of a special that sometimes doesn't do anything means you can have games with very little impact from your special, and as strong as a main weapon Squeezer is, it is not worth not having a special. Wall on it is fine. It allows it to fight ballpoint pretty well, which I could see having some use cases, but it does still have its own fair share of problems paired with the ink efficiency. If this thing gets a really good kit, it could be an absolute monster, so we'll have to see. But for now, I think it's a bit too limited for the main weapon to be much higher. Neo Splash does typical Neo Splash things, and I think it is okay. Tri-Strike is fine. It's not an amazing special, but it's a serviceable one. 210 didn't hurt it that badly, even with the paint nerf. And having a lethal bomb is fine. That being said, if you want a lethal bomb, Zap is now an option you can pick, and I think that might be way more valuable, so maybe Neo Splash is on the way out. We have to see. Nautilus is a weird weapon to rank. On paper, it is another very threatening kill option, but as a whole, I think it's whatever, mostly because ballpoint is also there, and it's really hard to do not comps with ballpoint or replacing ballpoint. I think it's just kind of stuck between that as a potential problem with it, and if that weren't an issue, I think it could be a little bit higher. It has very nice shot velocity, damage per second, decent paint output, a solid kit, one of the best weapons to pick if you want point center. It's got some potential for sure. Next up is Sloshing Machine, and yeah, this thing got its 5-frame nerf, but I think it's still a pretty solid weapon. It has pretty good area of effect, it still is very threatening to get hit by a direct with 76 damage, and of course, it still has one of the best kits in the game. Fizzy Bomb is very nice, just in general, between poking, combos, movement. It just has a lot of synergy with the weapon, and it is your best Booyah Bomb option. It is amazing for tower control, has a lot of synergy with the main weapon, and is useful in most situations. That being said, Machine's main problem is dealing with speedy comps, and honestly, if Tacticooler didn't get super popular, I would rank this as an S tier weapon, because I think Machine players are showing this nerf is really not that bad. That being said, it's the nerf tied together with new Tacticooler speed comps that I think are turning things around, which means it's time to talk about them. Quite a few weapons are being bumped up on this tier list due to Tacticooler being a thing, and it's time to start talking about them. First up is the 96 gal deco, and 52 gal deco. Both of these weapons are more aggressive fighting-based weapons that like to be able to control space, stall out fights, and threaten two-shot kills, and Tacticooler gives these weapons better ways to play around them. It's a bit of a double-edged sword because Zap is also solid against these weapons with its suction bomb and ability to fight people. Did I say 52 deco? Well, there we go. There's the misspeak for this one as well. We had one for the mid-tiers with foil flingza. Now we said 52 deco. There you go, guys. Regardless, the wall does still have some problems, particularly with the increased amount of lethal bombs. Kraken still has inconsistency issues, and 52 can struggle to get in at times, but I think as a whole, they're more than worth the pick right now and are benefiting from Tacticooler more than it's hurting it. Tri-Nuvo might not be particularly benefiting from Tacticooler, but it definitely meshes with it. The buffs have helped it be more worth it as a pick, and it's just your short-range map pick if you want something that can counter a lot of other short-range weapons with its quick, threatening two-shot kill. And on top of that, it's got a Tacticooler. It won't have anywhere near the output a Zap does, which is what this meta is based around, but if you want a cooler weapon that can also check a lot of short-range stuff, this weapon can do that job. Vanilla Slosher and S-Blast 92. Yeah, these weapons benefited pretty hard from Cooler. With quick respawn comps and a lot of team fights, the ability to do reliable area of effect damage that can ensure quick team fight wins or being able to have a lot of people weak are very valuable. Bucket and S-Blast both have the ability to do between 50 and 70 damage, and both have different utility. Bucket has a bit more reliable fighting capabilities, a bit of a faster kill time if it's not getting a one-shot direct, and just, you know, bucket angles in general, whereas S-Blast provides more versatility, a threatening one-shot kill at a larger distance, and a larger area of effect hitbox with the massive 40 radius short range mode. When it comes to these kits, neither of them are perfect. Slosher has Splat Bomb, which is great for it, but also Tri-Strike. While Tri-Strike can be a little bit better for it with Tacticooler, as the strat is rather than having to worry about having a special you can't pop when you get in, just die with the Tri-Strike, come back, and then use them as an entry tool. This still slows you down, it's still Tri-Strike, which isn't great, but it's a better way to use it for the weapon than most. And yes, sometimes it will die without having Cooler, and that will hurt, but Cooler definitely reduces that a lot. 92, on the other hand, actually has the better special for the role. Reef Slider isn't too bad when you can come back instantly after blowing up, and the insane reliable 70 damage is actually kinda nice. The few times Reef Slider actually works and you get a kill with it, you basically get in and take your own space, and that in itself can be very threatening. Rather than the special being the main problem, though it's not a super upside either, is Sprinkler. Sprinkler does not help this weapon get in. If the long-range shots were not threatening in terms of a direct or potential indirect AoE, this weapon would struggle really hard, and that's really the only thing keeping it relevant right now. Sprinkler is a big problem for it. Yeah, it's got some movement capabilities and some tanking capabilities. It's not completely useless, but it does still struggle a bit, and even if it'll get random cheesy kills at top-level play, it's just not the greatest sub. If both of these get buffs to their weapon kits, I could honestly see them being higher. Both have a lot of potential, and we'll have to see how the role of area of effect develops in these kind of comps in the future. Heavy Deco definitely benefits from Tacticooler. Kraken is something that keeps you alive and keeps offensive momentum going, and that's what Heavy Deco does. Is it worth replacing an Inkjet? Maybe not most of the time, but I think in Clam Blitz specifically, the ability to have Kraken cheese on your side can be very threatening. It's definitely a solid pick that Tacticooler has made a bit more reasonable since it originally came out. I really debated having Inkbrush in S tier, but I think I have to put it just a little bit lower. While distracting people is nice, it has a very solid kit with Splat Bomb and Whale being great tools to poke and get itself in with incredible self-synergy. The main weapon I think is just not enough to put it into the S tier. It's really close, don't get me wrong, but the lack of range and occasional unreliability on the kill time makes it just a little bit too low for me. I might be wrong, I could definitely see this being a bit higher, and we'll have to see depending on how Tacticooler comps stack with this thing, but right now I don't think it's quite enough yet. And that brings us to the last and most surprising pick of A tier, the Bamboo. So let me talk about some of the ways this weapon has gotten better transitioning into this game, because yes, it lost MPU, but it got quite a few things. Its old ink efficiency is back, so it has way more output. It has a bomb it can actually use quite a bit more with it. Its special still does quite a reasonable job, but most importantly is the maps. I played against a good Bamboo recently, and I cannot tell you how restricting this weapon feels in these maps. It is almost impossible to avoid going going through it. Because of that, in a well-coordinated environment against a good Bamboo, someone is taking 85 damage in a team fight, on top of being extremely hard to kill, especially with its mobility and killer whale active. This means it's just really hard to take out, and it's very easy for team fights against Bamboo to snowball the other way because 85 damage makes it very easy for someone to get picked off first. On top of that, it's really good with Cooler. It enhances its mobility quite a lot. A Bamboo with a bunch of run and swim speed moves ridiculously quickly. Now, this isn't a perfect weapon. There are some faster weapons that it struggles with, some maps it struggles with, and Whale is nowhere near as good as Inkjet. Now, this is largely unproven. We have to see what Bamboo players are capable of doing, but I think this patch, especially with Cooler comps, it's much more threatening. So, the top tiers. We have our last backline trying to compete with Ballpoint, Heavy Squalling. I debated putting this a little bit lower, but honestly, I think it still has a lot of potential. Wavebreaker is amazing on this weapon for serving as an entry tool. The combos are threatening, and it's a very difficult weapon to take out that has very solid matchups. It's absolutely a good counter-pick backline depending on what comp you're fighting. Against certain weapon compositions, especially stuff like Tetra, this is a weapon you really want your Splatling player to be able to swap to be able to fight, and I think it's quite valuable. Carbon Roller Deco is still the up-close monster it always has been, and I think in a more aggressive meta, being able to go in and get a lot of quick kills has become more valuable. On top of that, the Tacticooler is nice for this thing getting a little bit more Trizuka. I think it's all positive. Yeah, you can't shark as much with it with Cooler, but you can choose if you grab Cooler, and I think good Carbons will get good at knowing when to go for Cooler plays and when to not go for it. It's very reliable when you can get in, and I think good teams are good enough at getting it in, and Alliance Rogue is definitely proof of that. Tetradulies. These have been very interesting. Dark Tetradulies provides a bit more raw speed with Reef Slider slowing you down less, while Zipcaster provides a lot of potential for aggressive plays at different angles, and in the hands of good players has shown to be quite threatening and difficult to stop the dive. That being said, what keeps Light Tetra from being better than Dark is the Sprinkler. Having a bit of a bomb to poke is very nice for this weapon, and Sprinkler definitely hurts with it quite a bit. Honestly, this is a weapon I could surprisingly see going lower. While it is very nice as a QR weapon, I'm not sure if it's actually one of the best things to run with Tacticooler, since they don't have the greatest specials to get you in. It's definitely something I see more with Light Tetra, but we have to see. As a whole though, I mean, this is a pretty threatening main weapon. It can live for quite a long time while constantly getting in your face, preventing you from moving forward. It can threaten you with kills if the players have good mechanics, and it has kits that have a little bit of potential to make plays happen, even if it's inconsistent. Moving to a very similar weapon compared to Tetra's, we have the Wipers, both of which play a bit differently. Like with Tetra though, this is a fast weapon that struggles to be taken out while applying constant pressure. The Vanilla Wiper does this much more directly. It has more raw kill power with the torpedo combos as well as pressure from behind people, and Ultra Stamp, which allows you to continue some ridiculous streaks, and it definitely has a lot of threat. The Wiper Deco, on the other hand, is a bit more of a counterpick weapon to me. Beacons can be very nice with Tacticooler when it's set up, and Missiles allows you to get in while keeping a lot of the speed Cooler provides. Not having access to Torpedo for quick combos means the kill time Wiper has really starts to show its problems. It's going to be difficult for players to work around it. On top of that, this thing is not spamming anywhere near as much missiles as a lot of people think, so it's not quite just breaking the game at the moment with the cooldown nerf and lack of bomb. I am personally quite a bit of a believer with the Vanilla Dually. I think Cooler is quite nice for it, since it allows it to be really aggressive running quick respawn builds and still be able to get a lot of crabs. Being able to have a really aggressive Dually that can play somewhat similar to Tetra, but with more kill power and actually having ways to keep it special upon respawn, I think is something quite worth investing into. On top of that though, it's yet another weapon that has a lethal bomb that you could potentially run in your comps, and I think that alone is quite threatening. I'm actually gonna put Stamper down here, which originally was not the plan. The main reason is because as Cooler has become more popular, I think Stamper doesn't benefit from it as much. I think Stamper is one of the weapons that benefit from Tacticooler the absolute least. Realistically, Stamper wants to live quite a bit. It doesn't really have a special that benefits a lot from being able to be saved by Tacticooler, and it's a weapon that plays much more to pressure and pair with other weapons, which is still definitely useful. Don't get me wrong, Stamper is still a monster that can kill you up close, provide consistent mid-range pressure, amazing damage to objects, and is overall just quite solid. Finally, is the weapon that has been kickstarting this trend of Tacticooler I've been talking about, the NZAP 85. Now, right now there are some alternate comps without Tacticooler that might have a chance to be able to thrive, particularly Double Splash and trying to just hold your ground down no matter what with crab tanks. However, it is really hard. Zap's cooler output is ridiculous. With 180p as well as an absurdly long duration that can stack with special power-up, you can just have infinite coolers with this weapon. Being able to have a team constantly with tactic cooler up, constantly keeping aggressive pressure, constantly keeping their specials, constantly challenging new space is very difficult to fight, and Zap is a weapon that provides a lethal bomb and the ability to fight with its cooler when it needs to. It is incredibly flexible, and even with how new cooler has been, we have seen Zaps like Jared running mass QR builds and going super aggressive, and more passive Zaps like Clicks who are able to provide constant survivability, keeping their team alive, and bomb pressure. Multiple playstyles clearly work with this weapon. Will it stand the test of time? Are cooler comps really the future? Personally, I think it's there. I think there's going to be alternate comps, but I think cooler might be what reigns supreme. And honestly, I think it's for the better. It provides a lot of interesting interactions with team comps and boosts up quite a bit of weapons like we've talked about here. I'm very curious to see how this develops. That being said, cooler strats are not foolproof. Alternate comps can work against it, and that brings me to our top 2 weapons. At second best weapon in the game is the Splash-O-Matic. Flexible, capable of playing quickly with cooler comps, but also being the best option to deal with them. Being able to lock down space with Crab, threatening burst bomb combos, and an incredible amount of versatility and flexibility is amazing for this weapon, and despite consistent nerfs to it over the patches, it has thrived and remained at the top of the game. It might be getting a bit more competition now in the Crab compartment with dualies, but I think for the time being, it's definitely on top, and if you're running anti-cooler strats, this is your #1 pick. That being said, I can't call it better than Ballpoint. Let's be honest, guys. The whole reason that cooler strats even started being attempted is because Ballpoint and its inkjet output are so strong that having a special that allows you to regroup and counter push when the special recalls has become something people want. Cooler strats did not work against Triple Splash when it was the best weapon in the game. It is only since this option has been checking mass crab spam along with nerfs that we have seen something rise up to deal with inkjet. We kind of got a little bit of a triangle here. Ballpoint's inkjet and that threatening capability, but with a vulnerable recall that allows for counter pushes, allows for cooler to be more popular. Crab provides some stability that allows you to hold ground against tactical comps and keep your space, and inkjet is amazing at dealing with crabs and checking splash. That being said, I wouldn't call this a rock, paper, scissors meta because all of these weapons can be picked together. Ballpoint is ran in these same fast comps. The same inkjet that, yeah, has a recall is also great for getting its team back in. It's nice to have a weapon with long distance pressure, and Ballpoint more than benefits from the intensify action, run, and swim with cooler. And on top of that, Splash is more than capable of keeping up with Ballpoint comps, with Zap comps, or running its own ones. I don't think any of these weapons solely define the meta, but what makes them so good is both of these weapons can be ran with any of these comps. It doesn't matter if slow comps prevail, or if fast comps prevail. Regardless of those, these 2 weapons are going to be picked and at the top, and especially this one. With that all being said, I think it's a pretty solid meta we're in right now. Don't get me wrong, things could get way better. There's plenty of subs, specials, and main weapons that could use some buffs. But overall, I think it's in quite an interesting spot, and honestly, I've been having a lot of fun with the game. I can't wait to see how things go from here.